We're going to switch over to our next story here, which has to do with a series of reports culminating in a Forbes investigation recently that, there are a lot of details here and it's very easy to get wrong. But the gist of it is that Forbes found on-chain evidence of a $1.8 billion transfer out of a wallet that was supposed to be the backing peg for one of Binance's wrapped tokens, in this case, BUSDC. And according to Forbes, that left circulating BUSDC that was unbacked, or at least did not appear to be backed based on Binance's on-chain accounting. And then what happened was, over the course of about 2 days, we got a series of, as was being referred to earlier, some contradictory or unclear claims from Binance about what was actually going on. They denied that there was any risk to customer funds or that stablecoins were left unbacked, but they still haven't provided a really compelling and clear explanation. Specifically, in one statement, they said that the moves identified by Forbes were part of an internal rebalancing. And then the very next day, CZ got on Twitter and said, no, they're actually customer accounts or customer transactions. So there is a scenario where those two explanations are not incompatible, and there are definitely innocuous explanations that are still on the table for what Forbes found. But their communication has been so slapdash and inconsistent that it raises questions in its own right about a lot of different things. And we talked about the attitude towards journalism, and that was certainly on display here as well. So it's a bit hard to entirely swallow their explanations when it also comes with a heaping side of we don't want to answer questions at all. Zach.
Yeah, I mean, this is sort of like reminiscent of what we saw with the wrapped BUSD thing, right? Where, there's BUSD that's issued by Paxos and it's a stablecoin that lives on Ethereum. But then there's also this other BUSD that's on BNB chain that's ostensibly wrapped. And I think there was some past reporting that occurred that suggested that there was like a $1 billion or more discrepancy between how much actual BUSD there was and how much wrapped BUSD there was. And now we're seeing something similar with the wrapped USDC stablecoin here, right? So this does sort of seem to indicate that there are some shenanigans afoot when it comes to these BNB native stablecoins relative to the bigger brands that they're attached to. And I think that to me is what stands out in this report is that, whether that's creative accounting or shifting between stablecoins or, something maybe a bit more nefarious, I think that's still to be determined. But it does indicate that this is not just unique to the BUSD story that we saw earlier. It was also potentially happening with the wrapped version of USDC, which I thought was the interesting sort of revelation that has surfaced here beyond the response. But yeah, a lot to unpack in this one.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry.
No, go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to, sort of flesh out what Zach alluded to, which is that one of the real anxieties here, and, perhaps Forbes went a little bit hard, as I said, maybe fighting the last war, comparing this to FTX, but it's still not completely out of range that there could be rehypothecation going on here. A lot of the sends that were identified were to trading firms and to market makers and other market structure participants who could have been doing anything with it, and it's hard to provide any clarity there from public data. And so we're relying on those actors, and we're not getting clear answers from them. So again, there's no evidence specifically that this is what's happening, but the anxiety is that it's something like FTX, and they are loaning out stablecoin collateral. And I personally, I don't think that's what's happening, but the appearance is there and it's on the table. Christy, go for it. Sorry.
A very minor point here, but sort of like going back to what I was saying about answering questions, there's a lot of weird ins and outs when it comes to how you are going to be accounting new forms of money like this and where it moves to and how things move around and where, it's all on a blockchain or we have proof of reserves because of whatever technology that people don't really fully grasp yet. And it's a lot easier to sort of misdirect and use terms that are either sort of crypto gobbledygook in order to obfuscate what's going on, or to simply use terms like, oh, it's just simply moving things around. and
rebalancing
sort of
in this
looking
case was
down
the term
to
that they
whoever
used.
it is asking the question and putting it in a way it's like, well, you wouldn't understand it anyway. Just think of it like moving things around because it's too hard to explain. And that, I think, is going to cause troubles for anybody who is trying to figure out what's going on in this case and in many others in crypto.
And just to, I'll be self-aggrandizing here for a moment, because that tendency to give incomplete answers or to not give total information, that may be aimed at more mainstream media outlets where, we don't want to confuse your little brains. But A, Forbes already did some really gritty reporting on this specific story that gets into the weeds and shows that they clearly understand what's going on. And B, when you're talking to us, CoinDesk, I mean, not to overstate the case, but we understand this stuff better than the people running the companies. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to claim at this point, because we've watched multiple companies crash and burn after not answering our questions about their operations. And so if you're Binance, it is no longer a tenable position to say we don't have to answer these questions fully. You got to get it out there. You got to give us the information, or we're going to publish things like what we published yesterday, pointing out the failure of your communication strategy.